Hi, friends. Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm your host, Josh Horton. We're back with new episodes every Monday, thanks to our editor, Sydney Gladue, and I'm so glad you're here. If you want episodes a week early, exclusive content, and discounts to workshops and events, become a Beta Creative Workers Union member. The link is in the show notes. As always, I need your help. Social media doesn't go far without a lot of time, money, and a little luck. If this episode resonates, send it to a friend or a teammate who needs it, and bypass the algorithm by joining our newsletter. That's how we share real updates, new episodes, and opportunities with our community. In this conversation, I sit down with my friend Theresa Fitzgerald, a creative consultant, designer, and educator who's helped shape the visual language of some of the most beloved kids brands in the world: Sesame Workshop, Nickelodeon, Peanuts, and Scholastic. Theresa shares a powerful perspective on designing for kids, the role of play, the influence of nostalgia, and how Sesame Workshop continues to bring hope and education to children across the globe, even in times of crisis. We also dig into the shift from fun to purpose in creative work, the promises and pitfalls of AI, and why now more than ever we need creative workers who prioritize craft, curiosity, and community. If you're feeling stretched, rethinking your role, or holding on to that spark of childlike optimism, this episode's for you. Let's jump in. Back in, I think it was 2022, I invited Theresa to come up. We have a mutual friend, Ty Matson, who had done some work with Theresa at Sesame Workshop. And Theresa came up to Memphis for the 2022 conference to speak and be a keynote there. She was absolutely delightful. And one of the things that just struck me about Theresa's work and what she's been doing for a very long time, she was VP of creative at Nickelodeon Studios, has worked with Peanuts and all of these really amazing childhood brands and heroes. One of the things I wanted to spend some time talking with you about is just like this, first off, what were the principles that guided that work that you found guided working on brands targeted at children? Just talking about that kind of like childlike optimism that I feel like we all have, and other folks like my friends that have, if you go into my office, I've got tons of toys. Most of the stuff is what I had as a child, and I'm just trying to bring it back in. But I think it's something that's really, really important to keep, our creative spirits up and going and reminding us of times. My childhood wasn't perfect, but the times when I was playing with toys and watching these movies and doing listening to the music, it was magical. What were the principles or the guiding principles that you found in doing that work for brands like Sesame Workshop, Peanuts, Nickelodeon, all of the things that you've touched?
I was a struggling reader. I'm dyslexic. I didn't like learning to read. There was plenty of tears. And so early on, I just fell in love with like the pictures in a book, and how they almost made the struggle worth it. Almost. I did eventually learn to read, and I grew up in a creative family, but I really found that that's what I wanted to work in kids meet. I thought I'd work in kids publishing because back in those days, that's what media was practically. Then I chose a college, which was a tech school. It wasn't an illustration school, and it was modernism, Swiss Bauhaus kind of
Right.
thinking. I did illustration on the side, and I learned kind of the approach to design that was like corporate design back in those days. And I was really bad at it. It did not come naturally at all to like form, files, functions, simplifying everything down, because I love to like create these little worlds, But then over time, it all came together, right? So and one of my guiding principles of designing for kids is like so much historically, the design for kids products were so bad. Just like, dancing rainbows and how many fonts and, just too many colors, too much like, kids are like crazy. They're funny.
They're not going to be connoisseurs of this stuff. So why do we have to have any kind of rules or design around this, right?
Right. I actually like to provide the dignity to kids of like, they actually do have taste, and why not help form that? Why not make beauty with delight? Why not? And so then having the opportunity to work with like iconic global brands, characters, working with Snoopy and Charlie Brown back in the day, and really that was like early branding days where it was a cartoon. It wasn't a brand. It was a story, but bringing that outside its original form, right? So that was doing that, and then it ended up going to like Nickelodeon, working with a lot of cartoon characters and creating the world outside their original medium, and using design to make sure that everyone who engages with those characters, they're true, like that's their connection is the same, but then you bring them to new mediums, and like how can you stretch them, how can you bring them to life in new ways, and how can design have a powerful way of amplifying them. So that was kind of that's been the through line with working with all those kids brands.
I assume too that all of those shows, let's take Nickelodeon for example, all those shows kind of had their own brand managers that you worked with that were kind of like head over those things, right? Because they kind of get it. That's all they're working on, but you're also working on kind of the larger world at Nickelodeon. Is that kind of how that dynamic played out?
Each show has its own story and kind of its own like DNA, that then needs its own kind of way of expressing itself. As Nickelodeon developed and as the world of branding and entertainment was fiercely competitive, growing the Nickelodeon brand and growing meaning around that so that the shows actually were connected in some way, and that you'd only find them at Nickelodeon. Like there's no way this would be on Disney. Disney was about magic. Disney was about Main Street USA, like the kind of nostalgia and the magic and great characters. But Nickelodeon had its own kind of like, might be a little like messy, but no one's going to get hurt. It's going to be like made for kids, and it might make parents a little uncomfortable. Crystallizing those things that made it different, and then creating design systems around that. It's like creating a design system for slime, so that and I think that's like kind of one of the funnest projects ever, was to really think about the philosophy of slime and how it could go outside its original format and still feel true and ownable.
So I remember sitting on my parents' bed when I was, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, home from school, maybe this summer. My sister was only a few years older than me, but she was watching me. And then it was, you can't do that on television, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was where that came from, the
That
slime.
was totally the origins. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so amazing. And then seeing the memes these days, where like, I think it's Katy Perry or something, it's like sitting at the Nickelodeon Choice Awards. And then
That's right.
it's like, it's crazy where that stuff goes. But yeah, so what were the things that you had to distill about slime?
So that had the shapeshifter orange logo, the
Right.
splat,
Yep, I remember
right?
that.
That was like the network branding. Slime was more the essence of being a kid, just like messy, clean fun. Really like to watch kids like stand in line and to get slimed was like elation. So how do you take the emotion of that, the emotion of kind of the dread and the excitement and the delight and the mess, and put that into like consumer products? Or how do you bring that to an executive event where you're not actually sliming executives, but how do you create that emotion in other ways? So it's like coming up with the philosophy, and then what are the graphic systems, like, so that the color, the experience still creates that emotion.
That's amazing. Yeah, and the other thing I remember about slime growing up was the I forget Mark's last name, but Double Dare. That was like, I don't know what it was about that show, but I was captivated. I had to watch every episode. I knew what time it was. And I would come home and from school and just like sit on, I flip back and forth between MTV Countdown and Nickelodeon, which is so ridiculous back in the day. It's like I'd watch Guns N' Roses and Axl Rose, which was way more probably things that I shouldn't have been looking at and idolizing, and then I'd go to the safe world of Nickelodeon, which was really amazing. So back to this whole thing about you kind of like a childlike optimism or a childlike limitlessness or whatever that is. Do you practice that? I mean, is that something that's near and dear to you? I mean, you work with all these child focused brands. I'm not exactly sure what the technical term would be there, but um, there's something to be captured there. There's something to know that, like, ultimately, I feel like it's, you walk into some folks' home and like there's no toys, right? There's no
Right.
nostalgia. It's like super serious. And then, or, I love this with some of my guy friends. Like you go into that one room and they've got guitars on the wall and
Right.
whoa,
Right.
and a couple of framed posters, and that's their room that they can do that in,
Yeah.
but then everything else is like super slick and polished or whatever. And, and why do toys? Why does that nostalgia in your mind resonate so much with creatives?
There's this window of time when we're growing up that, we're not heavied with like the responsibilities of life and um your ability to imagine is at its highest, right? And so there's toys, but there's also play, right? So toys, I feel like toys now, I wonder if toys now will have the same um kind of connection as they do in the future, because there's something called age compression where, I was like a 12-year-old playing with Barbies. Now I think the main age for Barbies is like 5 or 6. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know if you feel as connected to something when you're 5 because you're going to cycle through a bunch of other stuff. Where I was playing Barbies a long time. You know what I mean? So it's like I think play we can all own. I think toys, toys have a different, they're gonna have different meaning to kids now than I think what I'm guessing what
Sure.
we have.
No,
Yeah.
no. Well, I think what happened to me was the Super Nintendo came out and I got focused on video games over, though I still had, I mean, I can still remember what my childhood room was like. I had a TV, like a 13-inch color TV, which was, oh, wow. And a Super Nintendo that I had to hook with, it wasn't RCA cables. It was like the UHF adapter that had to be hung on the back of it, which is just so crazy to think about. And then, yeah, I think I started transitioning because of video games out of play. And then also I had an older sister who was watching like movies with, like River Phoenix and Corey Feldman and Teen Bop stuff that was like, she was trying to become a teenager. And so I was like, oh, well, that's what I should be doing. And she had all these friends coming over and I was like, well, I've got to be the cool, young kid or whatever. And I think that kind of forced me to grow up in a weird way. But I do see, especially with technology and TV. I mean, sadly, my 4-year-old, and I have to limit his YouTube, but he is addicted to YouTube. Anytime he gets a chance to get on that TV and watch YouTube, he's on it. And the play, he's got tons of toys everywhere, but he leaves that behind. And I guess if you expose him to older ideas like I was, I mean, they grow up faster. So, God, man, I've got to find a way. I mean, I'm lucky to have such a young child right now, but I've got to find a way for him to stay that way much longer.
Well, you're not alone. I mean, I think that's the challenge of the times. I actually do think that's like a major challenge of the times is that, I know I'm on my phone more than I should be. I know that and I mean it's interesting because I think play is ageless, right? And I think there's a lot of, I mean, tonight I'm going to a party that's called Play and Social Action. And it's a bunch of people who, want to find a way to, get through these times. And they're using play as like as a powerful engagement, right? Um, one of the things I've been doing, and I think I mentioned this, is like I want to like I've gotten curious about my struggle to read, and so I've become a reading teacher. Like I've trained to be a reading teacher, and I'm working with kids, volunteer on the side. And it's just like reading is a drag. Learning to read is a drag, especially if you have some different way your brain processes. And I really think the engagement, like we need to reinvent education in a more engaging way. I really think that we're failing kids right now.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like we've been failing kids for quite a while,
we
right?
have been, and I think that there's got to be the play of imagination. And if you love robots, like let's put math and science and English and everything right through your robot filter so that you're
Right.
engaged with like how that story is told. And that is one of the things that AI might help that happen at scale because
Sure.
yeah, I mean there'll be some experimentation, but we know right now is what we're doing isn't so much working. So
Do you think that, I mean, one of the things that I think about reading, and one of the reasons why I've started to force myself to read again, and I say force is because I have ADD, and so I mean I'm the type of
totally.
person that reads a whole page
Yeah,
and then gets to the bottom and has no idea what I just did.
that's right.
And so I have to read it again. And I've found that the best place for me to read is on an airplane. For some reason, I can read a book there and back, like in going to West and back. I read a book, and yeah, I feel like one of the things that, and my wife also has ADD, so we talk about reading in a sense of like it's a way or a practice of focus, right?
Right.
And I feel like that's, something that a lot of kids that grow up with a TV, I mean, we grew up with TVs too, but at the same time, it's a different type of thing. My TV's 77 inches and I consume, these really amazing movies on them. And so does my
That's right.
toddler. So
Yeah, that is really funny
yeah, yeah, yeah.
compared to your 13-inch in your bedroom.
Yes, yes. And the first one I had was black and white, right? So,
Yeah, that's right. Can you
um,
even imagine that now? It's so funny.
I know that, yeah, it is funny.
So I think there's a lot of power in play. And I think, also when we all feel so like we don't have the agency right now to make a difference, or we're not sure where use our voice, I'm wondering if play at all ages, not just for kids, for all of us, is kind of something that's worth exploring.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, so when someone, I don't know exactly what these chemicals are, but when someone
Yeah,
remembers something and then they smile, I mean,
yeah,
it's just a hit of something
yeah.
and your brain does something that, I mean, I see it in my father. My father, I believe this year is 71 years old, and I'll talk to him about something that happened when I was a kid and you'll just see him light up because he remembers it. Right.
Right.
And there were silly times and it wasn't as serious as everything. And, yeah, it's incredibly important, but society, there's all these societal pressures that keep us from going there. And almost a demand for seriousness and no
Yeah,
silliness and things like
yeah,
that. And I'm a very serious person, as you know, but the balance of play, I mean, it's huge. I can be serious on a podcast, but if as soon as I'm off this podcast, if you go into my room, there's a drum set, there's a bunch of toys. I mean,
right.
it's a balance that I'm striking all the time.
Well, I was talking about different case studies at a talk I was giving at college, and I was talking about Snoopy, and I just realized I was talking about the original form of storytelling and then how the story spreads, right? Um, and I was thinking these kids that I'm talking to, they're college students, they've probably never seen a newspaper with a
Right.
cartoon in it.
Right.
And so then I'm thinking, is Snoopy actually almost like Hello Kitty? Like it just absent of
Right.
any like interaction of the characters and oh, they would never do that. It's just like, oh, that's funny that he flies.
Right. Well, then there's a story behind it, right? He, I think at some point imagines he's the Red Baron, and
Yeah,
then
that's right.
there's a whole dog fight going on.
Yeah.
And the
I mean,
only
who
reason
knows Red
why,
Baron anymore? Like any of that stuff is like just and then it doesn't matter. Does it matter?
right.
Does the root system matter? Is it okay that Snoopy's like a Hello Kitty where it's just like, oh, that's cute. I like that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my
I don't,
4-year-old absolutely loves it, but for me, Peanuts was a Sunday, Family
yeah.
Circus, Peanuts. I'm
Yes.
trying to think of the greatest hits for me every Sunday morning. And then I think one of the brilliant things about Peanuts, and I'm sure this was only due to time, not really intentional, is that you only saw Snoopy at the holidays,
That's
right?
right.
You only saw the stories in
Halloween and
animation.
Christmas.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was just like the Great Pumpkin was the thing that
So good.
I mean, I've seen it, you know, and I only saw it once. That's the other thing is like, I think it was CBS.
Right.
I'm trying to think of the intro.
Right.
Anyway, but so CBS only showed it once, and I think maybe later on they had another showing of it or something like that for folks that miss it. But it was scarce, right? And so it became more special.
That's
And
right.
nowadays you can just, I mean, we own all the Snoopy things,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, Christmas. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. It's all at our fingertips right now.
I mean, I wonder, do your kids respond to that though? Because I feel like the animation is so antiquated and the pace of the story is completely different to like now how those stories are told.
Yeah, I would love to know. So
Like, are your
yeah,
kids watching it for you or are they actually like it?
that's a very good point. I think because my wife and I have the same feelings about
Yes.
Peanuts, they watch it for us, for sure. And then it's also fun because like he'll be doing something over here, and then the screensaver will do something random, and Woodstock will be flying and then hit
That's right.
something and then fall down, and then Snoopy
Funny.
like
Yeah.
laughs and which you and I can hear Snoopy laughing every time
That's
he
right.
does that laugh, right? Like
That's
it's
right.
so good. But yeah, I bet they're watching it for us. The other thing that I think is really interesting is the Charles Schultz family, I guess, foundation or whatever kind of like came after he passed. They had to kind of wrestle with this brand and identity and how this was going to be representative. How was animation going to happen again? And, develop principles around that, I'm sure. And then that 3D animation that came out, they've not come out with one since, but it was a pretty big deal to put
Big deal.
together a 3D animated Peanuts story. So
Well, any of the brands that I've worked for and every brand out there is like always like, how do you stay relevant? Like, how do you stay true to your roots but stretch to new audiences? And some of that old animation doesn't jive with the way new media is working. So yes, that had to be a very difficult conversation because that's a very personal family. Like they're still very closely involved.
let's fast forward a little bit to Sesame Workshop. I had the opportunity, Alicia Coleman, our mutual friend, you introduced me to, and then she came and spoke at the 2023 conference in Memphis. What a delight. And DJ'd too, by the way, which was really fantastic. So I got the opportunity to tour the creative offices at Sesame Workshop. And, I think one of the things that immediately struck me is, and I think this is a good conversation to have around USAID, basically all of the things that people don't understand that Sesame Street is touching on. There's an entire, brand of Sesame Street or a sub brand, I don't know what you would call it, that is employed during times of war for children, right? So there are all these wars going on all over the world, in different ways. But there are these brands at Sesame Street. I can only imagine the small amount of refuge and instruction and education that it gave kids. You probably know the areas that were affected and you were trying to reach, but like that struck me as like, wow, okay, I did not understand this. I mean, I understand Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street in America, but I did not understand how you all were impacting the rest of the world.
Sesame Workshop is the educational nonprofit that runs Sesame Street. Sesame Workshop and Sesame Street are, I think, 55 years old now. So they were born out of the civil rights movement, and their mission was to level the playing field and prepare kids for kindergarten. So they saw that often it was in urban areas where kids were behind. And so they were providing, that was their service. And they were one of the first shows to have a multiracial cast.
Yeah. As a child that grew up in the Deep South,
That's
right. I mean, it was one of the places where that type of thing, just diversity, was normalized in the midst of people that or characters that I absolutely adored.
Yes.
And so the feeling was love versus hate.
That's
and
right.
so that was one of the tension points, I think, for me.
I mean, really just the right thing at the right time, right?
Right.
It was so they saw, going into it, they saw that like kids were not prepared for kindergarten. They lacked education. And they saw how kids were learning from like commercial jingles. They would
Right.
remember, cereal
Yes.
song, and I can still sing some of the songs that I remember from like watching early commercials. So they used that medium of commercials and created what they call a magazine format of a 1 hour show of just puppets, people, and animations that would introduce a letter of the day. And then there'd be like several segments around that letter and how it sounds and how it behaves. And it would be like it was like a variety show for letters and numbers.
Yeah,
And
that's a great way to distill it, for sure.
yeah, and it was and puppets were part of it. And they found that puppets were a great medium. They weren't white, they weren't a race,
Right.
they were just like a great way to cut across. And they didn't expect for it to be like pretty much immediately it was popular around the world. There was something about it that was new. And so then what happened is there was over time, they created over 30 co-productions around the world. So what they would do is they'd use the same model that we used in the United States, was using puppets and Muppets, using humor and music, and doing deep research of the regional need and creating a show based on that area. So it was
Are the studios in America, all of them, or are they in those
they
countries?
were all like local shows.
Amazing.
Yeah. And
Same
so
characters with different voices, or how was that?
sometimes the same characters, but they often created new characters based on the
Amazing.
need of that place. So
Right.
for example, and I use this example a lot because I find it so moving. In South Africa, I think it was 25 years ago, there was the high rates of HIV. So, and there was an intolerance to it. And it was like 1 in 4 kids had HIV, I think it was. And so they created a Muppet that had HIV. Now that would never work here because that wasn't the need of our time. But there they were trying to grow tolerance for this thing that was, their society was suffering with. So it was the same for like in the Middle East, there was girl Muppets introduced because they wanted to encourage, reading for girls, educate girls' education. So it was each one, in Israel, there was Palestinian and Jewish Muppets created to like play together to model. It's always about modeling, a better future. So long history of that, right? And always based on educational research of the area. And then there was a lot of places that Sesame Street that was made here was exported to. So it was both. It was co-productions and then the exported US one. Sesame as a nonprofit, Sesame Workshop, there was never going to be a huge marketing budget to get the word out of these other social impact projects they were doing. They had to put the money back into educational materials. So there's a lot of social impact projects for all the years that really no one knows. Like people were like, I never knew, like just what your response is. That's often, Sesame Street has like a 90% recognition as a brand. Sesame Workshop has like a 9% recognition. So people don't know the work it's done outside of the show that they've watched on TV. But there was, from the beginning, a lot of educational programming that was often sponsored through corporate sponsors, foundations, or the government. Head Start or USAID, that would identify, again, working with educators, identify a need, and then using Muppets to tell stories to help that audience. And so I think what you're talking about is, I think it was in 2017, we won a first time ever grant. It was a MacArthur grant. It was called 100 and Change. And it was out of like 2,000 different nonprofits applying for this $100 million. It was $100 million over 5 years. And Sesame ended up getting that. And it was a result of the Syrian war. And there was a huge amount of refugees. And so what happens is the average stay in a refugee center is 13 years. That's a lifetime, right?
Wow.
And I mean, it's a childhood, really. And there is some funds going to education in these refugee communities, but very little going to preschool, very little going to like young children's education. So Sesame worked with, partnered with the International Rescue Committee to create materials, and the IRC had the people on the ground, and Sesame created the content, the educational content. And so it was really based around, one, if you're undergoing trauma, your brain literally stops functioning and it interrupts any ability to be educated. So it would be first a social emotional of like understanding your feelings and being able to talk about how you feel. And then it was educational materials, learning letters and numbers, right?
Yeah.
Always going back kind of to the core. And it was very successful. These programs were very successful in those camps. And the content actually found a lot of different places. So what ended up happening is, as different regional conflicts were created, we would translate the materials, customize it to the need of that culture, that need. Like when the Ukrainian war broke out, then again, customized content and translated into Ukrainian.
Social media across all kinds of different. Yeah. It wasn't just TV or.
No, so it was anything from like training parents to talk to their kids about, how to help their kids identify their feelings and talk about them, and then the educational material. And then for kids, so kid facing, parent facing, trainer, teacher facing stuff. But then Sesame has always done a lot of different, they'd carve out little areas of need, and Sesame Muppets have a unique way to meet the moment of very serious. So they've had a long-term relationship with the military, and we created materials where, how do you talk to your 3-year-old about if you're being sent overseas? Like, how do you talk to your child about your dad, their dad leaving for a year? Or how do you talk to them? There was a few different segments of it. Like, how do you talk to them about if they come back different, either mentally or physically? Like, that's scary for a kid. Like, how do you host those conversations? Or how do you talk to a child about, like, if they don't come back, like a true reality for too many? So it was that kind of thing. And then also we did educational materials talking about parental addiction.
I'm immediately just reminded of all of the, after school specials that I watched growing
That's
up.
right.
It's like it was one of those ways to tell that. And what I think what most people don't understand is that it may be the only way that someone has ever shared this type of, it may be the only touch that they ever get
Right.
to a better understanding how to navigate the world or how to share this information. with the child.
Working at Nickelodeon was so fun. Like, it was so fun. The culture was fun, the time in the organization was fun, the properties were fun. But then going to Sesame Workshop was so meaningful. It was fun as well, but like having a purpose to the work that just felt like kind of noble and just like it just the meaning was really like, I'm super grateful I had that.
Yeah, and the other thing that I thought it was not surprising because I've kind of studied kind of these like ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, and some of these really amazing creative studios over the years. But the other thing that struck me is that every person who was employed at Sesame Workshop, they had a job and a role there, but if you understand their reach and what they could do or how they drew and just, I mean, just people at the top of their game, right? And you think of a Sesame Workshop was a nonprofit, and you think of that, and I'm sure everyone worked at a discount in some way, shape, or form. But I was just so struck by how amazing the talent was, and I'm sure that the mission is really what kept people going.
It is
You know,
it really is the mission that like it really is the filter for like if you want to be there, because
yeah,
there's
yeah,
other
yeah.
places you can make more money.
We're kind of getting to this point where we have to, make some decisions about our career. I mean, I feel like that the older I get, the more purpose I want in the midst of the work that I do,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
And I'm grateful for the times in my life, my early life and my early career, if you will, sorry, that it was more about play. It was more about trying things, doing work that would be seen as cool. I worked in the music industry. And so a lot of, the cover art and those kind of things, like it was incredible to be able, but then, as time went on, and it was earlier for me just because I feel like I'm a much more serious person led by conviction. I feel like, the older I get, there's two things that I want to do. I want to work with people that I love, and I want to work on things that matter.
Yes.
Quick pause. If you're getting something out of this conversation, take a moment and share it with one person who needs it. Social platforms don't always deliver, but you can stay connected by joining our newsletter in the show notes. This is where we share updates, new episodes, and everything happening at Creative Workers Union. What's your lenses at the moment? What's the work that you're currently doing? And what are some things that you're kind of looking forward to? What are some things that I guess you're kind of inspired by and looking forward to these days?
Um okay, I'm curious. Okay, I'm curious about how AI is going to change things, right? And I'm
Sure,
using the word curious because I truly am trying to keep it in that. Working for kids all those years, it makes me feel like, okay, so I don't need to work in the kids field. I actually think all living beings are starved for delight. And I think that's what
sure,
it so much comes down to. And so much of the work we did, we had to assume that the audience was non-readers, and we had to be really clear with like the emotion of it and what we were communicating. So when I think of grown-ups now who don't read and are so distracted, I feel like all those years working for the kids field is like actually all of us right now.
right,
Like, we
for
don't
sure.
read and we're distracted, right? So it's like harnessing, like, how can we harness in this world where everyone's so like, we have an epidemic of isolation and loneliness. We have overwhelm. Um, and there's so much fear of the uncertainty. Like, how can I borrow the wisdom of all those years and bring
Sure.
it to the need of the time? Then so I don't know if that's a real answer, but I am kind of
No, it
fired
is.
about that. And then the other thing that so when I look at what's going on in the world and all those categories we talked about, I just think change. Like, change is the thing that's happening at a pace that we are not, we humans aren't, we're not
Evolve to.
doing change well. We're
Yeah.
not making change through human filter. We're making it through a productivity. Even when you think of like climate change, it's just like we are experiencing something that none of us are prepared for, right? And so
Right.
I'm wondering if I can layer on that the joy and the kind of the delight and knowing how to visually communicate where you capture someone's heart, not necessarily their mind, their heart. Like what
Sure.
is how to, because that in the end, I think it's going to be what's going to move us, right? And so I've been taking some classes on change management um, because I don't think we're necessarily doing that well. And that's the one thing we know is consistent. That's going to be the thing that's consistent. We're going to have to so how can I harness the experience I have to create comfort in ambiguity? How can we connect to each other in a more meaningful way? And I know this is all like very high end because I don't know, like, what does that mean? Where's that going? But these are the things that are exciting me right now because I feel like there is a real need
Of
now.
course. Yep.
Now.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one of the things that I think about a lot, just during these difficult times is, and I think it comes in time too. So I don't want to, I think you could say that everyone's born creative, right? We all have to figure out how to survive. We all have to figure out how to navigate the world around us, build tools, grow those things. But the creative, right? The creative professional, the person who's been literally able to, has found security in doing that for so many other people, that person becomes someone who is so much more, I'm sure also because of our emotional intelligence, it's hard changes has proven to be, at least for me, much harder to deal with at times. But it's my career in this industry has made it easier for me to navigate change, right? Because I've had to solve these problems for so long, for so many other different people, and having to, not doing it all formulaic, right? I think when you're young, you're doing, oh, it's just a logo, it's a website, it's this, that, and the other. And then the older you get, the work that you get, it's like, oh, well, the only way I'm going to keep getting work is if I actually solve the problem that they asked me to solve. And that's going to take, something novel. That's going to take something that I don't know right now. And so I think one of the things that I try to tell creatives is I feel like it's going to be us who are, stewarding people through this time, right? We're one of the things that's really important for us is that we are kind of charged at being tellers in a weird way. Like we're the ones telling the story, for the most part, especially in media. And we can do this personally too. And I think we should do this personally too. But we're kind of charged with being truth tellers. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm so, I don't, focus is not the word, right? But it's like I'm in the clouds too about this stuff, is like, how can we encourage more people right now, instead of, I guess, sticking with this like constant dread, to just start being truth tellers and putting really amazing things into the world. Because we all know this too, in times of recession, in times of, um, anytime things have gotten very difficult, it's creatives, whether it's music, film, art, it's those that kind of like, you know, bring us out of those times, right? And
Right.
guide us through those times.
That's right.
And that gets lost so quickly because a lot of that's not, monetizable at the moment, right? It's not something you can run through the filter of capitalism or something. And I hate to seem so focused on that. I'm actually starting to read this book about the impact of capitalism on graphic design, because it's definitely there. But yeah, it's so important and vitally important right now. So yeah, I'm glad that you're thinking about those things. We need more people doing that.
Well, I mean, it's this is like maybe optimistic, but like as we see institutions just like collapsing and be having challenges that we're like to your point, it doesn't seem like we're at a moment in time where the old solutions are going to work. So,
Going forward,
like,
right? Yep.
the only way forward is like courageously, creatively try something new.
Yep. Yep. See what
Because,
sticks.
yeah, yeah. And,
In some
you know,
ways, that's really incredible, right?
well,
There's
I was
this
gonna
new,
say, I
it's like
actually
a,
think these could be the best of times in
right,
a almost optimistic,
right.
overly optimistic way. It's like with destruction comes opportunity for out of the ashes comes new opportunities. If everything
Totally.
was all in its place and going well, there'd be no way in, right?
That's
Or
right.
you're in,
That's
you're
right.
already set. Now, I mean, it's scary, but uh the only way through is, the only way to the other side is going to be through. And so we're made for these times. We're actually
Yep.
better equipped than
Yep.
many.
Yeah, and exactly, and the other thing that I think is really important during these times, and I found this out at Creative Works West, is where we launched the Creative Workers Union, which this is a part of that. But a part of most of that was built on these principles that I felt like weren't just novel principles. These are long lasting
Yeah.
principles that, stand the test of time. And then, kind of out of breaking through my insecurity about just being a leader or saying things out loud because you don't want to alienate people or whatever. I feel like right now is the time for people to actually start becoming more principled and being more outspoken about those things. Um, in good ways. Not, I mean, obviously everyone's got principles, but for those of us who, love creativity, love humanity, have empathy, thrive off of that, I think it's really important to start saying things versus kind of in some ways just kind of
Going
doing the
along.
same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Ultimately, that's what happens is you end up just kind of going along with it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's, I mean, good grief. I mean, we've all heard stories about people going along with it and how horrible that can be.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things too. There's a balance. I think I can't assume that everyone's going to be as serious as I am about all of this stuff. And so, are there small ways that you can be a truth teller? Are there small principles that you can kind of, small lines that you can draw in the sand that help you navigate this time, right? It's things that I feel like you have to be able to look at, sometimes literally look at and just ground yourself in a principle that will guide you through this time of uncertainty. And it's really, I mean, good grief. I mean, I think the thing I say, and this is kind of my non-serious part of it, is I'm here for it, right? Like this is a wild time,
It's a
no
wild
doubt,
time. Yes.
wild,
Yeah.
and I'm here for it. And in the midst of it, I've got to make money, I got to pay bills, I've got to
Hmm.
take care of my kids, but I'm here for it. So, looking at it from that lens, and there's things about my life that I've changed. We don't travel as much. We
Hmm.
didn't get a new car. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are changed, but at the same time, we're not, we didn't, I don't know the best metaphor, but I'm not in a corner, like
Yeah.
hiding,
Yeah.
I'm here getting things out there in the world. And I think that's so, important. I also like the way that you're choosing to view AI, right? I mean, um, Marianne Banshees came and spoke at West
Oh,
last
wow.
year,
Yeah.
and her talk was about what the capabilities of AI at that moment. And she's been doing a lot of research about this. And what she ended up doing, I mean, that talk was very polarizing for some folks in the
Sure.
audience. And I think it's because their fear was up front and they didn't allow themselves to really understand what she was saying. But at the end of the day, what she was talking about was the limits of AI. And again, we don't know. We have no idea what this thing is going to grow into.
Mm-mm.
But we do know it's not going to be human. I mean, that's one of the
Right.
biggest things that I kind of cling to. But I love your optimism around it, or at least maybe that's not the right word, but at least, the way that, and I use AI through Chat GPT, it's the
Mhm.
only way that I feel like, and I people already know this too, because there's like M dashes and some of the stuff that I
Yeah.
post. But my words, and you probably know this through me with emails and conversations. The way I think is like there's a lot of dots
Mhm.
that
Right.
that through Chat GPT get translated into those M dashes. But it's given me a sense of confidence, right? I'm not using it for nefarious reasons. I'm not using it to hurt anyone or take things away from folks. But I view AI at the moment at this very kind of optimistic thing. And I know there's folks that can't do that. I mean, I think there's different industries, illustrators being one of them, that you can at least see, and now hand letterers. I mean, Jessica Hish has now started showing, and showcasing really what AI can do with hand lettering, and some of the folks are doing that stuff too. But you remain optimistic, and I think that's an important thing to do, because regardless of whether or not it will become harmful, there's really nothing that we can do about it,
Well,
except for
that is
not feed the machine,
right. Right. Well, I mean, I optimistic might be too cheerful about
Sure,
it. I
sure.
am curious. How about that? Curious.
Yeah,
And I mean, I don't know if I'm proud of this, but like so much of my later work in my years is I was running a department, right? I wasn't the one who was creating the beauty,
right.
hands on. I was creating the atmosphere where beauty could happen, right? That was
Sure.
my best day. I was creating an atmosphere where creatives thrived. And there is a art and craft to that, but it's often like politics. It's, shaping projects and pushing back and, building new collaborations outside of people you agree with.
Right.
It's
Right.
like that. If I was mid-career and hands-on, and I love being a designer. Like I went to school, I wanted to be an illustrator. Like if I was in the middle of that point, I don't know if I'd be optimistic. I do understand
Sure.
that is a real threat to, the way we've thrived. And so it doesn't mean we can't thrive again. And I'm going to say it's easier for me to be optimistic because
Sure.
how I spend my time and how I've been making a difference isn't in the real crosshairs.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I think a
yeah.
lot of creative leadership these days, I think people have been saying this since Chat GPT has become more powerful, or AI, is that creative leadership is going to be needed in a stronger way. And that the weird part about creative leadership is that takes time. And
Hmm.
when you take some of these things away from folks, like the need to become better at something
Yeah.
because Chat GPT can do it, it's like a in today's society, honestly, that's the worst thing. It's like young creatives don't need shortcuts. I mean, if
Right.
there's one thing that
Right.
I could know to be true about our careers, is that the only way that we get to where we need to be, or where we can have a thriving career, is by doing the work.
That's right.
We
That's right. Putting in the time.
Chat GPT in a lot of ways, is a shortcut for folks. This idea that we're putting out so much content because that's how we think we're going to hook someone in the algorithm, right? It's
Right.
just so much
Yeah.
noise out there right now.
So
And
much
and
noise.
one of the things that AI does for folks is allow them to publish content and do it so much more quickly, and things like that. And so, but I think at the end of the day, my hope in the midst of all of this discussion is that, the same way that we view, plastic versus glass, people will start to romanticize
Yes.
real craft, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And not only desire it, but seek to employ it and advocate
Crave
for
it.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crave it. Exact. Well, I think that's a great word, and I think that's
Yeah.
going to happen without a doubt. One of the things that I want to try to find a way to do, I mean, we do this in person at the conference, but I want to find a way to communicate to people that what you're seeing online and on social media, at the end of the day, is not real. It's
Mm,
not really real.
right.
And what I mean by that is they're just showing the greatest hits for the
Yeah,
most part.
that's right.
You know, they're showing you the best stuff when it worked. They're not really talking about when it didn't work because, for example, if I told our sponsors early on that like, hey, our ticket sales are way down. We have, and then, we had 200 less people at West than we did last year, which is true. And our gross revenue was way down, right? Because of that. I mean, those two things go together.
Yeah.
Then you start to have doubt creep in from sponsors, right? And the same thing happens with your clients or potential clients is if your work is down or you seem more hungry or whatever it is, if you're candid about kind of what your studio is going through, your practice is going through, I think the fear is that doubt will start to creep in about your abilities and
Right.
what you're capable of doing. And I think that's this weird, harsh thing that, not harsh, it's just a reality that keeps people from being very candid about what's going on. And so I hope, again, it's going to take some time. I'm very new at this, but it's going to take some time to start having more real conversations with people. And that's why it's called the State of the Union. It's really just trying to get down
Yeah.
to what's really going on
Yeah.
versus what people are seeing on social media.
You had mentioned to me you would introduce the State of the Union or the union at this last
Creative
conference.
Workers
So
Union. Yep.
what was the reception? How did that go? What happened?
So it was amazing. I think it was the reason why it set a tone for the event. And I think I tend to do this just with candidness, but it set a tone for the event that like, wow, okay, so I'm going to be a part of something that's serious, that has legs, regardless of whether it's one person or not. And the realities of that, it's that I'm going to have an armature or framework to build my career around or to build community around, right? Around solidarity and beliefs and principles and things like that. So the reception for the most part is this was amazing. Thank you so much. When's the podcast come out?
Oh my
When
gosh.
does it was just like, where is it? And
Right.
I was just like, yes. And so I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm just back here recording is because people need it, people want it. And it's not going to be for everyone, right? I mean, I think there are
Yeah.
some people
No.
that want, who don't want to take their career as serious or um maybe identify more as an artist than a commercial artist, and that's okay. But I feel like we're going to hit a niche or a niche of people that really crave, who really want to go to their Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas party or whatever with their family and say like, no, I'm a part of a creative workers union, or I'm a part of something that's very serious. And this is what I believe. This is what I seek to do. And if we're about craft over content. And in this age of, influencers and influencer cultures, I mean, I know a lot of people that would probably, be in that bucket, if you will, but they also have the work to back it up.
Mhm.
And I just want to help, especially young folks that like you were articulating earlier, there's just going to be these gaps. And how do we fill these gaps?
Yeah. How do we connect the dots? Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good place to put a pin in it.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at at goodbyes and getting off this thing, I've found, but the good thing is that we'll continue to talk, and anytime you want to come back on and share anything. I mean, you were talking about the things that you're thinking about when those
Yeah, I
things
would
get
love to. I
distilled.
would love to have some insights to share down the road.
Absolutely. And if you guys are with us in the future in certain cities that we may be announcing sooner than later, you'll probably
Okay.
get a chance to hang with Theresa there as well. Thank you so much, Theresa, for your time on the podcast. And yeah, I'm so grateful for your friendship and your stewardship of what we've been doing, and my my emotions, the things I'm going through in the midst of this, and your encouragement. So thank you so much.
Josh, it's an honor. I love what you're doing. Keep going.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you think may enjoy it. And don't forget, sign up for our newsletter to get future episodes, events, and updates directly from us. You can also become a Beta Union member for early access to State of the Union, exclusive content, and discounted pricing on our workshops and events. The link is in the show notes. Got a story about a win, a shift, or challenge you're facing in your creative career? Send it to me at stories@creativeworks.co. We might feature it in a future episode. State of the Union is produced by the Creative Workers Union and edited by Sydney Gladue. New episodes drop every Monday. Until then, keep showing up, focus on your craft, and remember, you're not alone.